Welcome to episode 64 of Cyclops is Waiting For Me, an X-Men the Animated Series weekly recap podcast. I'm Rod. I'm a musician. I've mentioned this before. It's one of the last times I'm going to be able to mention it. So look me up online. I've written songs and I've sung songs. I don't think these things through when I'm talking.
And I am JC, and Rod doesn't realize we still have multiple series left to go through of X-Men animated shows when this is all done. But we also have a guest today. We have our guest, Carlos. Carlos, would you like to tell people where you're from and how they can find you?
Hi, guys. I'm Carlos. First of all, thank you guys for having me here and for inviting me.
Thank you for choosing to join such an interesting episode.
Hey, Van, bribery goes a long way. So just FYI, I'm also known as the Nostalgic Latino. I deal with a lot of relatable 2000s, 90s type of stuff on social media, whether it's on Instagram or TikTok. That's where you can find me at the Nostalgic Latino. And I'm here to just have a good time and just, reminisce on the good and the bad and the weird.
Well, we got two of those three.
Oh, man. There we go.
Also, yeah, we like John said, he picked this episode. Carlos picked this episode. We were like, which one do you want? And someone else actually called it before, right?
Yeah, Chris from XCast, who couldn't make it. So I was like, oh shit, who's going to be a guest? And when Carlos was like, I want that one, I was like, okay.
Carlos, I wish you could see our text thread. I was like, he wants this one. And John's like, oh, okay. It's like, okay, yeah.
All right.
Yep. Well, on that note, Cyclops is Waiting For Me is our weekly podcast series. We're going back and watching every single episode of the original 1992 X-Men the Animated Series in their original intended script order, leading up to the release of X-Men 97, which is coming to Disney Plus later this year.
Some quick reminders. We're a recap show about a series that started now over 30 years ago. There will be spoilers. That doesn't matter for this one. If you don't want to spoil for you, pause the podcast, watch the episode, and come back. I don't know. I'm kind of with Joe Russo on this one. You don't have to watch this one. We'll do our best to avoid mentioning anything about future episodes we haven't covered yet. And if you couldn't tell by my huge endorsement of this episode, we're currently not sponsored or affiliated with Disney or Disney Plus in any way, shape, or form.
You're going to end up making enemies of Larry Houston and the Leewalds for your commentary on this one. They actually still like us at this point, okay?
Well, I feel like loving the other 95% of this show to make up for that.
Don't forget to follow us on social media at Cyclops IWFM Pod on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook. And of course, make sure to follow us on your favorite podcast services. Finally, we record some of these episodes in batches. We got 2 tonight. This is one of our very small batches. So we might be behind on news and stuff like that. But like Rod said, the news on this one doesn't really matter.
Now onto the show. Today we're going to be talking about Season 5, Episode 6, titled Jubilee's Fairytale Theater. It aired November 16th, 1996, and currently sits at a 5.5 star rating on IMDb.
On IMDb, it is the lowest rated episode. I did go through, I checked every single one. This is IMDb. It's not universal. Like there are a few like best of, worst of lists on like Looper and stuff like that. It was always in the list, but it was not always considered the absolute worst. So
I think that might be the first time we've ever read a 5 on this show, right? Has there been another 5?
What was the Morlocks Christmas episode? Is that a 6?
I think low 6s have been like the...
Maybe.
Wow, then it looks like we got a doozy, gentlemen.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was between... On all the lists, it was between this... Morlock Little Christmas and Rogue's episode with her boyfriend Cody. Those are like rotating universally the 3 worst episodes on all the lists.
My vote's for this one. Also, I normally don't drink on these because I have to drive to John's, but we're doing this remotely. And also, me and Carlos both have hells of weeks. I don't know about John, but I'm drinking.
My week's been okay.
Me and Carlos, we're already Nostalgia Talk brothers. Now we're like something fucked with our car brothers in the same week.
Yes.
So John, watch out.
Thanks. I'm actually glad I'm not seeing you in person today, Rod.
Yeah, right. Anyway, so this episode starts off with Jubilee leading a field trip in like the Batcave, apparently, is underneath Xavier's mansion. I thought, were there tunnels before?
There was the monorail before.
There's a monorail, so they didn't axe that completely?
The Corsair episode, there was the monorail.
So they just 86 that, and now it's caves, or there's both?
Dude, he has a lot of property.
It's weird. It's just like, why would you even take kids down in the caves underneath the school in the first place?
There's an ulterior motive.
Like, why? And knowing that it's dangerous, too, so...
I also love they're bringing the kids to this cavern that, it's every few weeks they get attacked by somebody like the Juggernaut who's attacking the mansion.
That's true.
it's like, if he attacks at that point, it's going to cause another cave-in.
And that was something else. These kids weren't students of Xavier's academy because they didn't even know what Xavier did there. Like Jubilee had to be like, oh, it's a specialized school.
Right, but didn't you also get the vibe that the twins were freakish mutants because they weren't actually identical twins, but they talked like freakish identical twins. I thought they were mutants for a second.
The two that were arguing the whole time, Spencer and somebody else.
And they kept on saying things at the same time.
Yeah,
it was really weird. Yeah, because it took me a while to realize that the kids are not mutants at all.
No.
They're just regular kids from Westchester County, New York.
Yep.
And there's a school out there that thinks it's a pretty good a good idea to send their kids out to the, to one of the most crazy, most attacked schools around.
Right. And the part to even add to that is the kids, this is when we go into the later animation studio. So the animation and the coloring, everything else gets weird. One of the kids had like basically red skin. Like that was not a normal human skin tone. It was like a purplish mauve red, whatever you want to call it. But that was not actual skin tone. And I'm like, are these like just baby mutants? And nope, they were just regular rich kids from Westchester.
What would have made, that's probably actually what it was. It was just some rich New York kids. But like, what would have made sense is if they had put like a little seed of an idea, like these were suspected have the X gene or whatever, So that's why they don't know what's going on there, but they're there anyway or something.
Nope.
Because and this is later on.
Just public school kids.
Well, I guess speaking of
so random.
While Jubilee's giving this tour, she has a flashback to when she had to take this job, and Xavier is talking to her, Gambit, and Wolverine. And she's like, why do I have to stay to teach the kids? And it's like, because that's all you do here. But Xavier was like, if the president hadn't called me, I would have taken them myself. And I was like, oh, so the president assigned this field trip? And then they leave. I'm like, oh, no, they're going to see the president? I don't understand. Like,
they were leaving to see the president. Yeah.
There's so many random, details. It's fine, but it's like, they're just not connected,
And Xavier is like a G, man. He don't even care. He's still rolling in his chair, and he's still going up, and he's telling Jubilee, oh, I wish I would be there, but I got to take care of this shit over here at the White House. But hey, don't worry about it. And then Wolverine's like, oh, I cut him up to pieces, bub. I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? And let me say this, and since you mentioned like how some of the kids look weird, what I do appreciate is that this just seemed like a really messed up version of Magic School Bus. Because I do appreciate
that's fantastic
is how diverse these non-mutant children are when you think about it.
Yeah.
So if anybody watches the episode and you look at all of these kids, they're actually pretty well diverse. And it's like there is their own little representation, but one thing is all common is that they're all dumb. So,
well, there was one nerd kid. He was still dumb. He wasn't aware of what was going on, but that one kid was a nerd.
He was the know-it-all. He was like, did you know the blah, blah? And it's like, I want to be a geologist. Like, nobody cares, kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, kick rocks, kid.
You know the difference between stalagmites and stalactites? I don't know that, and I'm in my late 30s, okay?
I mentioned her a bunch on the show, but my friend Marvelous, she always calls that kid. You can tell it when they're adults, that when they were that age, that these kids are in this show, that they reminded the teacher they didn't assign homework. You forgot to.
Oh, what, teacher? No homework on Friday for the weekend? Oh, man.
So this episode got a lot better for me now you framed it as a Magic School Bus. So I'm going to take
it technically is. It actually turns into like a Magic School Bus episode in that sense.
Yeah, because before my closest approximation of this, it was like the X-Men played D&D and Jubilee was like the DM.
She was the DM and the player at the same time, though.
Right?
Yeah.
And you know what? And what's funny, you mentioned that, John, because even one of the kids said, how come you have to be the star of the...
Yeah.
This is my story.
Because it's my story.
So one thing that did stand out. So not only was this the first time we see the redesigned version of Gambit, this is also when they swapped his voiceover actor for the final few episodes too. Basically red skin for Gambit, which made no sense, and then new voice actor too. And that voice actor, all due respect to them, doesn't hold a candle to the original.
No, it did sound weird, and I hadn't watched it in a while, but I do remember how he sounded like, but in this one he just sounded really weird. He sounded even weirder in the fantasy Fairytale.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's like 4 levels of degradation of Xeroxing, right?
Yeah, it was just as weird.
Because the original Gambit was already kind of like on the line of his Cajun accent, because it's a Canadian.
It's a Canadian doing a Cajun, yeah.
Cajun accent, and then the new actor is doing like the impersonation of the impersonated Canadian Cajun accent, and then in the story itself was like a fairy type, like Ren Fair Gambit, doing the impersonation of the impersonated of the Canadian.
You need to make an infographic
Cajun.
of that, Rod. I want when this episode goes live, there needs to be an infographic. The best part is Rod will text me the night before the episode goes live, be like, "What the fuck is the infographic supposed to look like?" Right. Guaranteed.
Oh, that reminds me. I have one to make about like having a truck in the new show or something. I have to figure out what that's gonna look like.
Oh yeah, we have to figure that out.
But yeah, so we figure out that this was all kind of like a daydream from Jubilee. I don't know why she's daydreaming about the moment that she got the thing that she didn't want to do.
It's giving us context of why she feels shafted and stuck with horrible children.
It was just a funny detail because like I thought we were just like flashing back, but it was like she's actively thinking about this right now and like ignoring all the children. But then like the cave starts to rattle, like there's a cave in, not a little bit, like a earthquake, and she's like awfully calm about it. So I guess maybe Jubilee was a good person to do this trip because she's used to cave-ins in the caverns underneath the X Mansion.
Basically, anybody but Storm is a good option here, I feel like.
That's true. That would have messed up and made Storm do this.
It would have been a very different episode if Storm was the one.
But yeah, she's like, don't worry, kids. This happens all the time. Just stand against the wall. We're like, okay, ain't none of those kids are wearing hard hats.
Telling you, Professor X didn't give a shit. Neither did the principal of the other school that decided to send these kids to their potential death. The caves underneath that school. I just don't understand where their caves are.
Somebody put out a life insurance policy on these kids.
Or like they saw that one of the mutants could tell the future, and they're like, oh, they're all going to be villains. Jubilee like leaves the kids alone to go check on the cave-in, which I get kind of because she don't want the kids to get freaked out, but also she left a bunch of children alone during a cave-in. And then she pulls out a beeper and starts.
We don't know it's a beeper until that little smart kid ends up pointing it out that it's like a crazy beeper.
He knew the specific model of it too.
I never owned one. Is that somewhat of a real description?
I mean, so I had a beeper when I was in high school for no real actual reason. It couldn't message, it couldn't SMS or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until that generation where everybody started getting cell phones that they started putting text messaging capabilities into beepers. But I don't know, maybe there was some advanced SATCOM thing, but it didn't look like she was giving a message. It was more so like emergency button, find me. It was like a GPS locator more than anything else is the vibe I got from it.
I got the life alert type of vibe from it. Help me, I've been caved in and I can't get out.
I like that.
I'm going to start killing children.
Yeah. I like that one of the kids was like, well, that reached through the rocks. And she's like, anyway, you want to hear a story? Might be the last thing you hear.
I got 5G, kid.
Right.
I'm currently watching the start of season 2 of Yellow Jackets, and I just was like, oh, cool. It's going to take like 6 hours before these people start eating each other.
So Jubilee decides to kill the kids. Tell the kids a story. End of story. The kids all ask. So this isn't exclusive to this episode of this show, but the kids all ask, like, does it have princes and princesses and love and blah, blah? And you hear this in TV shows and movies all the time, like kids asking for these stories. Do kids ever ask for these kinds of stories? I don't ever recall being a kid asking for, like, a princess story or something.
I think in that situation, it was like, well, we have to find the perfect story. Is it going to have princesses and princes? Is it going to have dragons? Is it going to have action and fighting? And then at this point, it's like, dude, I don't give a shit. Yes, it does, kid. It's going to have everything.
I feel like kids these days would be like, is it true crime?
I mean, I've always disliked kids, even when I was a kid, so I'm probably not the best person to ask of, like, would kids ask for this or like this? So,
well, it's kind of like when we were talking before about Wolverine making a chemistry set reference and stuff. We're like, what?
Yeah.
Was that just a TV trope? Or maybe that was something else, like we always say, carried over from a previous generation. They liked hearing princess and prince stories, and so... Oh, the 90s kids, they still like that. Then it was like this weird beginning of a Disney movie, like Beauty and the Beast or something, which kind of makes sense because this was in the middle of the Disney Renaissance, so maybe that's what spurred this on. They showed like the storybook open. And
it also had a really weird CG transition. It was like somebody got like one of those programs for the first time, and they're like, it has to get used right here.
The opening was done in PowerPoint.
It was like little stills, gradual scrolling.
Yeah.
And I tried catching as many names as I could. I think she just said Prince, but didn't specify Scott just yet, and then Princess
Correct.
Jean, and then the McTaggart crystal shard. Is there a reason for that? I don't know enough about the comics and stuff, or did she just pick like McTaggart out of the air because that was something in the show?
Because I thought that McTaggart was like the name of somebody.
It's Moira. It's Moira. Yeah, Moira McTaggart.
Moira McTaggart. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, but I didn't know like if I don't know why her, not anybody else,
or why wasn't the Macron crystal, which we know is actually a powerful crystal in the universe? I don't know.
Okay. I didn't know if there was some other like clever tie-in or something.
I don't know.
I'm trying to remember this episode.
Unless like some Robin Hood story actually had to do with like Scotland and not England, that could be the only thing, maybe.
Okay, I get that though, because there's a lot of like fairy tales are set in like Scottish settings, so maybe that was it. They're like, oh, that's a Scottish name.
That's all I got.
And then she tells the story of how the crystal was divided in half, and it attracted the attention of the evil Magnus. I love how in this fairy tale though, it defaults to almost everyone's government names and not their code names.
Yep.
It was not Magneto, it's Magnus, and later on they call Wolverine Logan. But this is a very classic story, right? It's like there's a magic crystal or that thing that everybody wants, but there's two pieces, so it has to be like a multifaceted journey. I don't know if I just missed it or they didn't say, but Magnus got one half somehow. He searched for the other half.
It sounded like it got split and he just had one and he was out to get the other one.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So he's looking for the other one so that he could conquer all the kingdoms, which, good job on them of like wording this right. Because originally I wrote like to take over the world. Like, oh no, she wants to take over the kingdoms, which could only be like, one small country or something.
They can't travel that far. It was medieval times.
I was a little confused at the beginning because she's talking about Magnus. And then I was like, oh, that looks like Gambit. Like, oh, that is Gambit. So my note here is Renfair Gambit is running from Magneto armor bots. And then they call them clankers.
I think that was a derogatory term for them. That was not an official name.
But then, like, fasting forwarding a little bit, the kids in the cave with Jubilee hearing the story called them metallic, so I don't know if there was like I don't know.
No.
It doesn't matter. Once again, continuity. Renfair Gambit runs up to some civilians and is like, please help me, which they were really quick to help, which, good on them, I guess.
Did you recognize the 3 character models?
Oh, I only recognized the one. It was Longshot.
Okay, so the other 2, the man and the woman, were basically very similar faces to Jubilee's parents from the very first episode.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's too much for me to remember.
Don't worry, I cheat because I look up shit online.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, I was just briefing Carlos before recording. I watched this 20 minutes ago so I could remember it. That episode for us was a year and a couple months ago now.
Year and a month ago, yeah.
So I would not have remembered them. Okay, so I guess that... Wow, so they actually did have continuity in this. Insane. Yeah.
Wait, so Longshot was he the blonde dude?
He was the blonde who is known from the Mojoverse episodes.
Did he even say anything in the shot at all? Because I didn't even notice him. Like, as soon as Renfair Gambit ended up showing up, he's like, Mon ami, I need you to, hide me in the hay or something. Oh, no, they tell him to hide in the hay. And then
because if he got captured, the rebellion will be doomed. So that's when they said, okay, get in the hay. Yeah.
It makes sense for Longshot to be in there, though, because in another episode, Jubilee has a huge crush on it.
They did pay attention to for Longshot, though, is they did make sure to have him with the only 4 fingers again. They actually they made sure that was consistent.
That's how I double checked, because I remember you mentioning that. I did remember that you mentioned that before, and it's always like, is this some random blonde dude? It looks like, because all the character models are so weird.
Yeah,
because of the new animation. It's like, okay, he has the like 3 fingers and the thumb.
Yep. What is Longshot's mutant power supposed to be?
Essentially luck.
Really?
Yeah.
Like Domino?
Kind of.
He's able to be a little bit more intentional with it, I guess, or something. On the Mojo Vision show, that's why he's the stars, because he's able to basically do like a human version of like Monster Truck Rally. And those episodes, he had like all the women around him and stuff. So I don't know. I don't know what the distinction is between the two of them. And he's like not of Earth, right?
Right.
That's why he has the weird number of fingers. But anyway, so they decide to help him.
The Jubilee sound effect goes off.
Yeah, the Jubilee sound effect happens because they start to get attacked by the metallics, clankers, I don't know what's and the civilians almost get themselves killed. Everybody starts fighting, and then they're all talking about Jubilee as if it's like nobody's ever seen Superman before, They're like, it's her. Could it be? And then even like the soldiers, which I couldn't figure out if they were just robots or somehow sentient. If they were just like sentinels, they would be like, oh, okay, here we're fighting. But they were like debating on the existence. It's just a myth. You have souls?
Yeah, because they didn't have any faces. It was just like darkness in their helmets.
Yeah, well, they're like floating armor, right? right?
Yeah, it was just floating armor. It was just...
It felt to me like a D&D villain. They're the possessed armor that you might fight in a dungeon and stuff like that. Like soul, sure. Yeah, it was a spirit possessing that shit.
The spirits of all the people from the X-Men have killed. Storm dropped out of a building, or Beast had gas. So yeah, then Jubilee comes in, and she's the most competent of all the characters. I don't know how else to really say it, because she like parkours in, she effortlessly zaps all the bad guys, saves the day. Then a cave-in the real world, I guess, interrupts the show, and that's when the kids are like, hey, why are you the hero? She's like, it's my story. Okay.
So Rod, I know you won't get this reference, so I'm not even going to ask you, but Carlos, since you are in the nostalgia world, was there anything about Jubilee's outfit that reminded you of something that was very like 80s, 90s? Like, I have a particular IP in mind. I'm curious if it connected with you.
I just thought of Peter Pan.
I could totally see the Peter Pan stuff. For me, it was ElfQuest, which I don't know if you ever remember. I never read it, I never bought it, but I remember seeing it at like comic book stores and conventions and stuff like that. Her design very, very much to me felt like ElfQuest and like the main characters from that for some reason. Or even like the fairy from Fern Gully. Like there was something about her that I felt like I'd seen that outfit before, but I couldn't place where.
Yeah, that's what because I was only thinking of either Peter Pan and Fern Gully would have been a good... For some reason, like when it comes to that type of particular trope, they always wear these shoes that are like... They have no laces or anything like that. They're just like, I don't know what they're called.
They're like slip-on booties.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Like they look like ballet shoes without the laces.
It's easy to draw.
Wait, I do want to also...
that probably makes sense.
Yeah. Who's the Marvel artist that couldn't draw feet, or was that hands?
Oh, still can't to this day, Rob Liefeld. But I also do want to point out, all of a sudden, Jubilee was kind of stacked.
Oh, I didn't even...
Like,
in the story.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
they all of a sudden designs. Jubilee had like a figure, and I was like, isn't she only supposed to be like 16 at this point?
I felt like she was telling the story about herself as if she was older, like she thought of herself as like a full grown adult or something. Because I feel like a lot of us, when we were kids, we saw ourselves as Cyclops or Magneto, but not like the 16-year-old version.
Totally fair. But yeah, she was definitely drawn stacked for the first time there.
It was the tight Peter Pan clothing.
They get back to the fight, and essentially they take down everybody, and the captain starts to run off.
I even had a little note here, like Jubilee tricks two of the clankers to Mortal Kombat each other. I love that as long as they're not humans, they can do stuff like decapitate them or cut them in half or something. My note here was Shrek Wolverine shows up and smashes the last clanker.
That's exactly what I thought. As soon as the Wolverine came out, and then it was like it was like a mix between Shrek and the Hulk.
Yeah, the Hulk makes sense, except it was the shade of green he was or whatever.
Yeah, it was the shade. And then when you looked at him from his back, when you look at his legs, because he has the torn off shorts, I think too.
Oh, yeah.
So it was like I was getting Hulk vibes off of that.
The only thing that stopped him from going full Hulk was he was never standing upright. He was always like slouched and stuff, which tends to be like that whole like trope of trolls and stuff like that in fantasy animation and such. But I could totally see it. He was also a little more of like a baby puke green as opposed to Hulk green.
Yeah.
This also kind of gave us insight of how Jubilee sees Wolverine. We've said in the past, like, she clearly idolizes him, like, thinks he's, like, a cool fighter or whatever. But I think this shows us that she thinks he's pretty dumb, too. One of my notes here was that she describes him as a disgusting troll, but with, like, a heart of gold.
Damn, I didn't realize she did him like that.
But also just the way he's, like, acting in it. He's talking in incomplete sentences.
He was actually surprisingly more chill than I thought.
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't berserker. He was like, I had my coffee and I'm good. Kind of Wolverine.
The only time he gets really aggressive is when they start to have this little conversation between Gambit, and Gambit's kind of like flirting a little bit, and he steps in between.
He was like, hey, bub.
That was my next note. It was like, is Gambit hitting on Jubilee? It just doesn't feel right.
Yeah. Gambit creepily flirts and then mentions that he has the crystal.
No. Producer's couch. I got the crystal, and it's one way to get it.
He's like, I could show it to you. And it's like, no.
Oh, yeah, that's it, too. He was like, it's back at my place. We're like, Jubilee, red flags. Red flag, blow the whistle.
And then Jubilee introduces her catchphrase of the episode, which is that she repeatedly talks about how she is good at getting out of tight places.
Oh, Why did
She
I
said
not
that like
catch
4 times in the episode.
You're
I didn't
right.
catch that.
And then it's reiterated again near the end. So, but we'll leave that for later.
So Gambit does take them to the crystal, and
Did you pay attention to the forest that they walk through, by the way?
Yes, the trees were they were like alive or evil or whatever. It was just really random. It was just like, it's like, why did they have to be evil? I get that it's like a magical kingdom, but it's not like the trees were of any threat.
So Rod knows why I'm reacting the way that I am right now. All the things for you as the Mortal Kombat fan to not be like, oh, it's the Mortal Kombat forest.
oh yeah, it's
Yes,
a little forest. Yeah,
you're
yeah.
right.
I just assumed that was like a D&D or something trope or whatever.
Oh, it totally is, but it looks exactly like the inspo from Mortal Kombat 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the game like right behind you.
I know, right?
Multiple versions all over the house.
I like it. I like it a little bit. But yeah, so they go.
To the cave, and then he leads them to Crystal. Now, let me just mention, this cave is all of a sudden like a cave of wonders from
Yeah.
Aladdin, which is
Very
hella
much so.
random. Because it's like, oh, hey, I hid all of this stuff in this cave. This cave has no security whatsoever, no booby traps, none of that stuff. And it's just a straight up walkway. And I think, weren't they like surrounded by lava or something like that?
So when they walk through, they had to open the one big door. But the one big door is the only piece of security.
Yeah.
And he didn't have the foresight to lock it behind him. That was when I was like, he keeps talking about how he's the best thief. And I'm like, you're not the best thief right now, sir.
Yeah. And the only thing you really need to open is be willing to mess with the skeleton.
Right. I was trying to figure out if that image on the door was something. Because it felt like it could have been like a Shadow King vibe or like a Mojo vibe, but it didn't like actually look like any of them. I was just like, is that a reference I'm just not picking up? And of course, looking through all the trivia online about this episode, nope, can't figure it out.
Same thing with the cave itself. It looked vaguely like a skull or something. I was trying to I froze it. I'm like, is that somebody's face? Like, are we gonna get a surprise apocalypse thing or something?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It was weird. But also on the way to this, Gambit reveals that the reason he has the crystal is that Magnus had hired him to steal it. And fortunately, Jubilee points out how cliched the story is. She's like, let me guess, and you kept it for yourself.
Right.
And he did, and he put it in this unprotected cave.
I mean, nobody knew about it until they got there, so he had some level of security. It's not like there was like CCTV cameras all over the place that were gonna, call it out. So
Well, and then the extra thing was like he gave Magneto a fake, which I don't know how he thought that was going to turn out. I guess he figured that he was going to be like long gone by then.
I don't think he had a great plan.
But also, while they're entering the cave through these doors and stuff, there's like a shadowy figure that follows them, and they do a close up on their eyes, and it's like, this is clearly Sabretooth.
Yes.
It's supposed to be
Hell
secret.
yeah.
I think it's like
that was
yellow.
That was the non-secret secret. Yeah.
And it's pretty uneventful for the most part. Gambit's like, there it is, and it is like the Cave of Wonders because there's like all this gold everywhere and stuff. And he just picks up the jewel, the crystal that's just like in the middle of the room, like on a pedestal. Here you go. There's that. They don't have like a bag or anything because they have to like leave this place with.
They got pockets.
Yeah.
Well, actually, none of them have pockets if you think about their outfits.
They did have a hay bale.
Yes.
But then in the real world, a cave-in interrupts again.
I love how you still hesitate saying real world because you're like pretending it's like, oh, real world, like our real world. Yes, Rod, we know it's a cartoon world. It's okay.
That, but also I almost don't even associate this last season with the rest of the show because these feel like AliExpress versions of the characters we've gotten to know for like 4.5 seasons,
Tough shit, it's continuity.
Right.
Wah.
And so Jubilee goes to check in on like where they had caved in earlier, and she sees like water seeping through, which I am not sure where that came from. I guess that's what caused the cave in. They were able to go in that way, so they passed water at some point and thought it was safe, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know. Apparently there's a underground water spillage or lake underneath the school as well.
It's right next to the monorail. It's just the next cave over.
Jeez.
I would love someone to map this out. Like, here's the cavern.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious now. Yeah,
And then-
so Jubilee
there's a
is like, hey, I need to get out of here.
And there's a possibility there's like a time machine city too somewhere underneath there.
Not yet.
Or like the beginnings of one. Jubilee is surprisingly calm. So maybe Xavier was onto something, and on something. Because he's like, not only does she do this all art, it's been so long. Because I'm not sure if we're clear on like how long this has been since the main part of the series in their world. You know, I mean, I guess it was like right afterwards, but
I mean, based on the next episode where Jubilee is driving, so we know she's been on the team for at least 2.5, 3 years at this point.
So she's pretty calm, and we know that they always have left her alone at the mansion to watch things, or the wedding got attacked. They're like, Jubilee, get the people out of here and stuff. She's always the home base keeper, so she's gotten really good at it. So I guess she saw like a cave-in and like a flood. She's like, it's Wednesday. And so she goes back to the kids and she's like, you know, no big deal, but maybe we should go for a walk while I tell you the next part of the story.
Here's the cooler part of the cave.
Right. Yeah. She does zap the cave-in to try to like buy them some more time, but also the kids didn't hear it. So I think you're right about the kids not being the brightest ones on this trip. And then she goes on with the story.
Right before you go through that, they end up going up and going into the higher part of the cave. Like, oh no, this part of the cave is cool because it actually has like a little hill or a steeper. And then she goes and I think it's a dead end, right?
It's a dead end. Yep.
And then the smart kid calls her out in her bullshit. Hey, this is a dead end. And she goes, oh no, well, I mean, this is one of my favorite chambers. And then that's when she goes like, as a matter of fact, just hold on a second, let me check something. She goes back and she feels that the water's been flooding up and is getting like really close. And then that's when she zaps it and then she keeps it in again.
That's true. Okay,
just in case. But I just like the fact that the little smartass is calling her out.
He's really smart, but he's just unaware of his surroundings.
Yeah.
He'll follow a stranger into a cave.
Yeah, but not notice that he's stuck in there.
So back in the story, they're fighting Sabretooth, who has revealed himself.
Who totally looked like Beastman from He-Man, right? That's the...
Oh, I didn't even put that together. Yeah, with a long ponytail.
Well, the long ponytail is like the one part of Beastman that isn't a piece of it, but just like the muscular vibe and the outfit totally gave me Beastman vibes.
Man, there's so many artifacts of the 90s in this show, especially when they get in these...
Well, that was episodes. 80s, because we're that old.
Oh God, yeah, okay. Well, we had I think the last episode that we recorded, not the last one that you listening have heard, had to do with Storm falling in love with basically a world of Masters of the Universe people. I think He-Man was still kind of going on though, right? Or like the early 90s and stuff, because I remember having the toys and stuff.
It was kind of dead by this time.
Okay, but then the Cave of Wonders makes sense though, because what did we say, 96? So
which like was definitely after Aladdin, because Disney Renaissance restarted in 92 or 93 with Little Mermaid. Yeah.
So I could just see if it wasn't already just on everyone who was making the show's mind, you know, if this is stuff that kids like, because in the other episodes there were dinosaurs and things that were clearly like, you know, Jurassic Park and Barney references and stuff. And Power Rangers even. They made a Power Ranger reference, but that was Saban. But if it wasn't that, I could totally see like a Fox or a Saban being like, we have to have action like Aladdin. Put them in a desert or something. I don't care. Just work it in. We don't have the budget for that. We have $40 and some toothpicks. Make an episode. But yeah, Jubilee in the story calls Sabretooth a kitty cat, which is kind of cute. Like Jubilee just really paints herself to be like way, way cooler and put together.
And really strong. Like it's not even a close fight. Like she just kicks the crap out of him.
She just straight up like flips around him and basically is like, hey, come here for a second. And she just basically slaps him around like nobody's business. It's like, what?
I also love that they were always very conscious of like showing people hitting each other, like humanoids hitting humanoids. But they did the thing where it went from like Sabretooth's first person perspective and she was punching the camera. And that was the way of like showcasing that she punched him in the face without showing her punching him in the face.
That's good.
Yeah, my note here was like Jubilee parkour Sabretooth to death.
Yeah.
But the small detail I noticed that, and I'm not sure if I just saw this wrong or if it was just hilarious and part of Jubilee's storytelling, she throws the crystal in the air and then attacks Sabretooth. That whole sequence of her attacking Sabretooth happens, and then it lands. It's like a full, like, 15, 20 seconds later.
Yeah.
So I was like, how long was the crystal in the air?
That was so random.
Even if she had, like, Superman powers to throw it, there's a literal ceiling.
Dude, she's a fucking elf. It's fine. The smart kid, there was definitely a line of him calling bullshit on that, too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you threw it at a trajectory of 88 degrees. and that force, and it would have fell down, less than 3 feet each second or something.
I would have loved Spencer to have called out, like, wait, that's only 4 of the clankers, and there were 5 in the room. What happened to the last one?
And then she's just like, oh, I pushed him in the lava. Next.
Yeah, he fell down a hole.
I almost would have loved this episode if that happened in the middle of that. Might have redeemed it. She's like, okay, hey.
Like she gets caught in her lie, basically.
She gets caught in it, but then she resolves it just like whatever. She's like, you just see like a ledge appear. She's like, here.
Yeah.
All right, we're done. Once again, even though there's a little fight, it's kind of uneventful because she basically takes out every enemy pretty easily. Like, she doesn't really get hurt herself at all. I don't even think she takes a hit.
I don't think she took it either.
And then they all run out.
And then they seal Sabretooth in the cave. She's like, we'll come back for him someday.
Who knows when that'll be?
He's going to starve to death, guys.
Dark times is literally the Dark Ages. And then when they get outside, I don't know why he didn't show up before, but then there's like glowing orb appears, and it's Xavier. And I don't know if this is problematic or not, but it really gave me like that Zombie vibe. Remember him from Pee-wee's Playhouse?
Yes, now that you've said it, yes.
Even the Zoltar, I think, from the machines on the boardwalk and stuff. And he just shows up and gives them information they need.
No, I was going to say, why is he wearing like a turban? But he's supposed to be like the greatest wizard on the entire kingdom. And it's just so random.
I think that was one of those like, I don't want to go as far as say like problematic, but like kind of like tropes, like shortcuts in stuff in the 90s, where it's like the mystical foreigner kind of vibe.
He was coming more across like a djinn, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
As opposed to a wizard.
You also get like Johnny Carson used to throw it on. I think it was just the tail end of that trope. But yeah, I mean, literally you go to Santa Monica Pier, and that is there. So yeah.
Yeah, so the Zoltar machine, the fortune on the card and stuff.
Yep.
So that was just random. Really, the only thing he contributes to that is that Jubilee has had the power inside of her the whole time. It's her light, which I thought he was being symbolic about, but then I figured out, oh yeah, so it's like literally her light powers, and that makes sense kind of because, kids, even when we were kids to now, our favorite stories are the ones where we find out we're the one, right? That was like the 2000s, it was like Hunger Games and Divergent and stuff. You're the one. Back then it was like, I'm a mutant, and I don't know what it is now for kids. Like
It's called main character syndrome.
Yes.
Yeah. Xavier was like also kind of dark because he's like, yeah, you have to destroy Magnus. It wasn't like, oh, you could save the kingdom. It's like, no, you get to kill this dude. Like, he was actually like all about it, which is not what our version of Xavier is.
Yeah, he was like, you're destined to kill this guy. You need to bring the other half of the gem over there and, show Magnus who's boss.
Which once again is kind of like, gives a little insight of how Jubilee sees everything. She's like, listen, we could just off this dude and we'd be done with half our shit right now. Because they've been fighting him for 3 years, or in her world 3 years or whatever. Yeah.
Which is the majority of her. I mean, it's like a decent percentage of her life. So yeah.
This whole time they're focusing on a rat that's in a tree watching them. So it has to be important.
Yep.
I did not know who this character was. I'm assuming he was important, or he was like a mutant of some sort. Because I know he's a mutant because he turned into a person, but I didn't recognize the character model.
I thought it was Mastermind, but it doesn't, there's no credit for who that is of somebody recognizable. Let me literally just IMDb it right now just to be safe.
Because I thought, it would make sense if it was maybe like a morph, or I was actually expecting like Mystique or something.
Yeah, I would have thought it would have been Mystique, but it was a dude.
Mystique would have made sense too because of Magneto.
Again, you're not wrong. There were choices made in this episode.
But then that's it for that character, I think. It's just an informant. I don't even think we get a scene, right? Do we get a scene where that rat person tells Magneto? No, we don't.
Nope.
It's just kind of inferred.
And not listed in the
IMDb.
Nope.
Don't they just go hey, and that's it?
Yeah. He said something about a surprise. I can't read my notes, of course. So, yeah, but he actually said a phrase, and he did not get a credit for it. So, sucks for that dude.
You'll be ready for a surprise.
But little girl has a voice. Your favorite doesn't. He's not credited.
Wow.
Well, so I'm figuring out now in this 5th season, when they specify names, there's a 90% chance it's not important. Carlos, in like a previous episode, I think it was Hidden Agendas, we done with Michelle Waffle, and they named so many specific people, first and last names. And I never know these people, so I wrote them all down. Only like one family was important of the main story.
And it was the one you didn't write down.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wrote down like that I should know this name, but I didn't know who they were. But everything else, like no other character was of any significance within the context of like the Marvel world. Like maybe it was the name of like a producer's kid or something, but like it was like, why you just name like they named like girlfriends that never showed up on camera. Like you told me Shelly. Like why do we need to know her name and their family list?
The best part is because we're recording these out of order. That has not aired yet.
Oh, oh yeah, that's so funny. Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, okay, that's 2 weeks in the future from now, Rod.
So minor spoiler here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, Shelly is a character that Rod becomes obsessed with.
Oh boy.
So this begins what I thought was going to be a setup for Gambit being a traitor because they've done this to him before.
Absolutely.
They show up at, is it Magnus's castle, I think?
I called it not Castle Grayskull.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And he like pushes some bushes away and there's a spiral staircase that is less guarded than the cavern. And he's like, this goes to the dungeon, which happens to be right next to the vault where the crystal is. And I'm like, what? That's a trap, right? That's clearly a trap.
And then Logan is like, yeah, how do you know all this stuff? And he's like, it's my job, in a bad Cajun accent. Yeah. And Logan just accepts it.
Yeah, I also love it, like, Logan kind of snaps out of, like, the troll character for, like, a second. He's like, wait, hang on, I know I'm supposed to be dumb here, but a few questions.
Gambit has a key, right?
Yeah, he also has a key when they get to the bottom of the staircase.
Yeah, he's really good at his job, guys, okay? I was still waiting for the shoe to drop because it has been easily a decade plus since I watched this episode one time on the original DVDs. So I was like, cool, they're going to get locked in the room and that's where we're going to get revealed that Gambit was like the shitbag traitor. Yeah. And never happens.
Expecting that. That's typically like the thing that happened. That's the very trope of like a thief.
So and also in the series, it's a little fresher in our heads, Carlos, because we've been watching it week to week, but there's literally episodes where they point out that he is likely to be the traitor and then like literally tricks people by like acting like he's the traitor. So it was very on brand for that. And maybe that was just like more clever storytelling than we're giving it credit for. That maybe it was like she was giving the impression that he might be the traitor, but didn't actually turn out to be, you know?
I would hate it if this episode was that deep. That and if they mentioned Project Wide Awake at the end.
I like how he says that he would have hated if the episode was that deep, but when the majority of the story takes place in a cave.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh God!
Come on, Rod.
Hey, see now Carlos is helping me with the puns. I don't even really like them that much. It's just that John hates them so much that is by contrast. I guess it puts us on the scale where I guess I'm making them
just awful.
So a little Easter egg for 2 weeks from now too. Also,
yeah. Now we're all messed up. When we record the previous week's episode after this one, I'm just going to start yelling at you in the middle of it to stop ruining everything.
No, it's going to be great. Luckily, this is the good episode to say all this stuff in, because like this episode really doesn't have anything to do with anything that happens in the show around it or away from it. Once again, they not fast forward, like everything's pretty uneventful. They just find the crystal and they start to like shove them together. Of course, they have to take like a long time to give time for the villain to arrive. So she does it way too slow. It was such a long time that I was able to type out the complete sentence. They find the crystals and put them together. Oh no, she started to. And then Magnus shows up and gives this long monologue as he's also slowly placing the crystals next to each other and tells Jubilee that I guess everybody knew that she was the key except Jubilee and Gambit and Logan.
I mean, I'll give the concession that if he's this big, all-powerful wizard, then he and Xavier probably know the triggers. So, sure. Like, I'll let that one go.
So he holds Logan hostage to try to get her to put the shards together. Logan gives this, I think it's, kind of meant to be a heartfelt speech. It's like, no, the light in you is what keeps me alive, which, again, is like kind of gives us insight to what Jubilee thinks her role in Logan's life is in life.
I mean, I think she legitimately believes that, though. Like, she legitimately is like, oh, he's this old, grizzled guy, and he needs something to keep him positive, because otherwise he's just going to become a murder machine. So,
or more specifically, disgusting troll. That was her quote earlier.
Well, she can't say murder machine to the children, right. So.
Yeah. And once again, I thought this was going to be a trick, but it wasn't. She literally just fuses the crystals together. Yep. There was no, she zapped Magneto or anything.
Because Gambit mentions that he gave him a fake half or something of the crystal. So I just thought at some point that would have made some kind of a resurgence there, or would have been the gotcha.
Yeah, we got lots of red herrings in this episode around Gambit.
Or whatever. I guess
he does have red hair.
And red skin in this episode.
Red herring.
Maybe the whole animation team just had fun with this one. Like, we're not getting paid enough for this, so we're going to throw all these things in here.
There is nobody on that animation team that had fun, okay? Judging by the quality of these few episodes, nobody was having a good time. Right. Those people were the bad, we're getting abused by our animation, boss, okay?
So Magnus gets powered. There's no trick to it. He receives the ultimate power or whatever, and then just immediately does, I guess at that time was the trope, was well, I don't need these people anymore, and he destroys all his minions.
That is so stupid. Oh my gosh.
I was gonna say the same thing. It was why this worked for you.
Yeah, I mean, he has all of his homies right there. It's oh great, I have all of this power, why do I need you? You need enforcers. But it was just so dumb. That's the very first thing that you do, is just destroy my the people, my allies, just for the hell of it.
Maybe power up your enforcers. Obviously, you're not going to let them get anywhere near close to you, but maybe make them not suck, that they can at least beat Jubilee one-on-one.
So this is a case where I feel like it was wherever the writing room was for this was we have to wrap this up pretty quick. So that's probably why they destroy these characters, because the next thing that happens is Jubilee zaps Magnus, and I guess she can continue to power the crystals because she overpowers him to the point where he's doing the one thing we thought would happen in the rest of the series, where just shit would attract to him and impale him or something, everything in the room just starts magnetizing towards him, including whatever was around Logan,
including nails.
Yeah. Yeah,
literally nails started flying at this dude.
But he's abs of steel, right? Yes.
Yeah.
And Zaddy Magneto has the abs going on.
His character design was actually pretty cool. I didn't get to say that, but he looked pretty cool.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't really know the science of it, and I don't even know if fireworks actually help power up magnetism or something. I don't know. I just thought it was weird. But my guess is that he was just getting so powerful that his magnetic force around him, or his aura, just became too uncontrollable, and then they all started coming in. It was just really weird when I saw the splooge end up going all over Magneto and catch him at the end. I don't even know what it was.
We haven't mentioned Cyclops semen in an episode.
God damn it, I thought we were going to get through it.
I'll send you an episode, Carlos, so you can catch up on that drama.
Okay. So I did recently get this from there's a series that came out in the past year called X-Terminators, and it's Jubilee, Dazzler, Boom Boom, who Rod had no idea who that was, and X-23. Mm-hmm. And they end up fighting a bunch of vampires, and part of the reason why they are such an effective group is because of Jubilee's power being light-based. So even though it's presented in the show as fireworks, it's her shooting light, essentially.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
In this particular story that she's telling, she almost presents it more of it's like the heart power from Captain Planet or something, right? It's something deeper, in your soul. I don't know.
Yeah, her light is her heart shining so fucking bright, or I don't know, whatever feel good moment we're supposed to get.
Well, mainly because of what Logan said. He was your light is what makes me a better person. I was oh, her power. Okay, sure. But that essentially destroys. It doesn't actually destroy Magneto, but it defeats him. That gets interrupted by real-world Wolverine, Cyclops, and Gambit showing up and blasting out I guess they knew that they were the dead end.
That was a really dope effect. I will give him credit. The fact that they went from her in the Fairytale world and the explosion that simultaneously happens in the Fairytale world happens to line up with Cyclops blasting through the cave.
Yeah,
I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
And they, those guys get them out of there because they were really close to the surface. They could step up into it. And then Logan starts to introduce himself, I think, to Spencer, probably. I don't remember which kid, but that tracks if it was Spencer. And he's like, hi, and then Spencer's like, the troll. I know.
Oh, the way they animated Wolverine's face for that, too. He does this weird scrunched up, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Kind of like a weird face. It was hilarious.
If that moment happened in Deadpool 3, that kid would have just been impaled.
I was going to say that moment for me was the evolution of the Captive Hearts episode, where it's Wolverine just standing there in the foreground, just being sad sack as Jean and Scott are making out in the background. It was just the fuck?
Yeah.
What'd you call me?
Exactly.
And then this was another like TV movie trope that I don't know if actually ever happens in real life, but all these traumatized kids that were trapped in a cave, they gave them hot cocoa, which it did not seem like a cold day necessarily, but I don't know, I couldn't feel it. It was just like you need comforting, so here's some hot cocoa.
Keep them warm.
Well, you're not going to give them bourbon, Rod, for fuck's sake.
I mean, I might, but
Want to like encourage like, oh hey, drink a whole bunch of soda pop.
Yeah. Remember, there is like S&P that you have to deal with and stuff. So yeah.
Then
Yeah,
Jean-
hot cocoa. It's literally just pure sugar in water, but sure,
Have
it's
some
fine.
juice. You can't give them Capri Suns or juicy juice.
See, that's what we would get. Like if we
Yeah,
were
exactly.
like,
Or chocolate milk in a carton.
yeah, or Sunny D, which is just sugar and water.
Yeah, it is.
But then Jean makes the comment. She's like,
Also, red skin Jean.
yeah. I think they just like it just bled into like all the redheads in the show. They were like, let's just smear it into the. Yeah, but she's like, I sense no trauma in these kids, especially for ones that have been trapped in a cave. Which I'm like, yes, this is what like all of us have been wondering what's going on.
And then that's when all the kids are like, come on, Jubilee, tell us the end of the story. And then Professor X is like, story?
Now I'm invested.
Yeah.
How was I portrayed?
Also, he's going to hear the end of the story, which is the worst way to deal with the story, is hearing the ending before you get to the beginning.
Better that he knows that he wasn't in a turban and a floating head.
It's true.
My only really note for the end of the story was Magnus was destroyed, and Jean and Scott are awful.
Also,
So
that did not feel like Scott to me. I know it was obviously supposed to be Scott. That did not feel like Prince version of Scott. Jean was the worst thing ever, but that was like a random guy was Scott.
It has to be an inside joke with the writing team now, where they always describe him incorrectly. Because a couple beats later, they talk about a one-eyed prince. I rewound. I'm like, did they give him one eye?
No, he had multiple
No,
eyes.
he's a regular two-eye guy. So Carlos, in the episode, there's a point where it was Wolverine called him four eyes.
No, Blob called him four eyes.
Four eyes. He's like, he either has one or three if you try to count it one way or the other. They always like say it wrong. And so this one, like the one-eyed prince, we're like, when did she say that? Like we didn't say that. We just saw two annoying people.
But and then Jean's voice was like fucking obnoxious. Remember Charlie the Unicorn?
Oh,
yeah,
I feel
hate
like
that.
this was the audio inspiration for the unicorns that Charlie hated.
No, I know what they were going for because it was like it was probably like humor on the writing or the animation or whatever side. They were like, let's just have fun with this.
Yeah.
We're not getting renewed. She's gonna be the over exaggeration of like the damsel in distress Disney princess or whatever. But oh my god, like
God, I hated the voice.
so she describes. Oh, I did have one other thing. She says, Jubilee, you to be princess, you're gonna have all the best tutors and blah blah blah. And Jubilee's like, not about that. So she is wearing her fairy clothes underneath. Her, Logan, and Gambit are wearing like the clothes that we've seen them in underneath their royal garments, and they just like slide them off and they just sneak out the back.
It looks like Wolverine is just going to get naked because he's like, his stuff is already barely covering parts of his body. So it's like, oh, there's going to be a naked troll in the middle of the court.
Yeah. And then in the real world, the kids were like, can we have another story? And Jubilee's like, well, you'll just have to come back and get caved in again. And then we found out she can parkour in real life.
Yes.
And that was the end of my notes. I don't know what I said.
Yeah,
It's a weird story.
Well, they kind of give to what you were alluding to earlier about like, she's always been the one that's been held back. And Wolverine gives the very not Wolverine response of like, yeah, she's ready, but is the world ready for her? And that does not feel like a Wolverine thing to say. That feels like a Storm is kind of high thing to say. That did not feel like Logan talking at that one point. I felt like Troll Logan was more accurate to Logan than what that was right there.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I don't know. Maybe Jubilee's been one narrating this whole show the whole time.
Right.
She just gave up at the end.
Yeah, that was just really random. What do you mean you're gonna give up all this? Well, I'll be a princess someday.
I'm pretty sure you get
today.
like, oh, and the cat wants to play piano
So
on the fucking...
This is time. She has the timing down. She did this in the last episode we did remotely. She's like, and we're gonna play a chord now.
Yeah.
But what was really weird is at the very end where, like what you said, where the Wolverine is like, is the world ready for her? And she's doing like flips in the grass, and I don't even know where the hell she's going.
She does this weird jump at the end that is not how human beings move. Yeah, when she's doing the flips, like I could accept the gymnast shit. I don't know. It was like the Irish jig style dance, but like her body's shaking a little bit. It was like she turned to Jello. It was really creepy.
Now, do you think that maybe, it's probably still happening, but I know as a kid in the 90s, like, this was always a trope where there was, like, a little bit of what was in the fantasy story in the real world,
Yeah.
Like, maybe there was like, oh, yeah, she really is a fairy hero.
No.
Like, I don't know.
No. Random factoids that we didn't hit on. This was actually inspired by, Rod, what issue?
Oh, I have no...
Guess a number. Uncanny X-Men number blank. I want to hear your guess.
I'm trying to decide if it's going to be, like, earlier or later. This sounds like something that they would be, like, reaching for a story. So, like, 500 or something? I don't know. So,
No.
was this early?
This was 153. It was called Kitty's Fairy Tales. Kitty Pryde, who was telling a story to Ileana, Colossus's little sister.
Interesting. That's
Yep.
cool.
And then really recently, they did a variation of this in the New Mutants comic, but it was Ileana, like, telling it from her perspective of, like, her growing up as this little, like, magic user in limbo. So it's not totally random and off-brand for the X-Men to do something with fairy tale narrative style worlds.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, and then there's that one comic that I got a one-off of, and I gave to you because I read it once and forgot about it. It's kind of like a Renaissance, like, alternate story thing or something. I can't remember what the setup for that was. But
Yeah. Also, one thing we've never actually addressed in the show, in our show, is what Earth number this is. So obviously, mainstream Marvel Comics is 616. Mm-hmm. Guesses, what is this world for the animated series? And we also got the official number of the Fairytale world's Earth number.
Really? Oh, I have no clue. Is it in the hundreds as well?
So animated series world is 961116, and
Okay.
and then the animated one is 92131.
Someday
they,
we'll find
they
out.
all have their official numbers. So
That's a weird one because that's the universe within the universe.
Well, I
That
guess
hurts my head.
with kind of like recent MCU rules, like they all exist somehow, even if they were kind of made up. The probability of it existing happens. So.
I mean, yeah, if you go into any of the alternate history storylines, like, Age of Apocalypse and stuff like that, that has its own number. Any of the old What If stories, each of those is technically its own alternate as well.
Huh. Even in this show, we had a couple where like things branched off and stuff. There's like alternate presents and stuff.
One man's worth.
Yeah, it was 2 episodes, right, where Storm and Wolverine were married.
Yep. And that was the one where the outfits of most people were inspired by the Age of Apocalypse looks too. I mean, the only other comments that I have from this one is in previously on X-Men: The Making of an Animated Series, Eric Lewald talks about they tried something different. It didn't end up working. He can see why, for regular viewers, this was their least favorite episode. And the phrases used to describe it, which were not necessarily positives, were young, gentle, playful, and whimsical.
To its credit, I think that if it had had more care in the animation and the production of it, and maybe more care in like the writing of it, it had potentially be able to look better.
I feel like the animation does such a disservice to it that, like, when you look at something and the animation is on the uglier side, it automatically puts you in like a negative predisposition on it.
Yeah. It's that remix theme song at the beginning. Just starts off with a bad foot.
He actually mentions that. He actually mentions the remix theme song in the book too, where it's talking about like, yeah, that was like a decision that got made.
Yeah, because I hadn't seen it in a long time. Obviously, the original theme and the intro, the way it looked, really stuck out. And when I started watching this episode, I was like, dude, what the hell happened? Like, it all sounds different. And I thought that the animation initially was really good for what it was.
It's just different.
It was just different. I wasn't vibing with it.
There are certain parts, like when I say like Jubilee at the end, who does like the weird jump and like her body turns to jello, or when Spencer, I almost called him Rusty. He felt like a Rusty. When Spencer like said something, like the way his neck turned, I'm like, oh, he just literally broke his neck.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Jubilee gives Logan a kiss on the cheek too.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
I just thought that was just really random.
Yeah, it was
the whole thing.
It was interesting.
Sabretooth is confirmed dead in the Fairytale world.
Fantasy Sabretooth is dead. He's starving to death and cannot regenerate because he's out of food.
Watch them bring him back in X-Men 97. They open the Cave of Wonders. And
Dear God, no.
it's like Return of Jafar, but it's Sabretooth, like, and it's Beastman instead. I don't know. So many pieces there. Oh, anyway, anybody else have any last thoughts?
I do appreciate how Magnus's helmet fits very well into the medieval scope of knights. So I thought that was a pretty good design in general.
I like the design of the metallics, if that's their actual name. They actually like felt really cool, and aside from the fact that they were trash and couldn't fight, like they actually looked menacing. So I guess it was worth it just to see Longshot get beat up a little bit by them.
Yeah, I could see like them if the episode had been better and like them making like some action figure like offshoot.
How are you going to make an action figure? It had nothing on the inside. It would have been hollow.
The 90s always had weird ways of doing this stuff. I don't know what would have been like a clear base or something. I don't know.
And also, what kind of conversation would the president of the United States might want to have with Gambit?
Oh god, it was actually an intervention. Like, listen, we have a lot of complaints coming in.
Professor X, Wolverine, and Gambit. Gene wasn't there, right? Am I tripping?
No, it was only the three. Yeah, so even Cyclops wasn't there.
Yeah, so it's like, so it was just like, what can
in the comments to this video, leave your theories as to what the conversation that needed Gambit to be there. Especially now that you brought it up, remember Gambit was the person that was going to assassinate Senator Kelly with the whole Mystique switcheroo back in the day too.
Right, forgot about that. Probably the writers did too.
Yeah, and then would you rather sign a permission slip to have the kids go to the caves or go to the magic school bus and
you know what? I think
and fly inside somebody's anus?
See, I thought you were going to go the other way with it. I thought you were going to say, would you rather have the kids go on a field trip with Jubilee as the chaperone or with Gambit as the chaperone? And it's Jubilee every time.
Yeah, and maybe that's the thing is like Gambit is not allowed to be alone with children, like legally.
I forgot. Have we seen him in the concept art, or have they removed him from being problematic like Pepe Le Pew?
Oh, I have no idea. I can't remember if we saw him or not. I mean, he'll probably still be around. He'll probably just like not hit on teenage girls in the upcoming series.
We'll see.
Jeez. All right. Well, before we take off, Carlos, one more time, where can everybody find you, and what do you have coming up besides dealing with a new car?
Wow, man, too soon, Rod. God,
I'm in the same boat, right?
It's fucked up, Rod. Hopefully, by the time this airs, that has been resolved. So,
well, before I even sign off, I just wanted to say thank you guys for inviting me. It was a fun conversation. I think we can all agree that Jubilee sucks worse more than we realized. And you guys can find me at the Nostalgic Latino on Instagram and on TikTok. And if you just like remembering random relatable stuff from back in the day that it's probably useless information, but makes you feel good or sad, then yeah, say hello.
We've just been recording useless information for the last hour and 16 minutes. It's fine.
And chances are you probably, if you're a millennial that's on either of those platforms, you've probably seen one of Carlos's sketches. And now you can attach a name with it.
Yeah.
You're everywhere. Thank you for joining us. If you have any thoughts, make sure to drop them in the comments for either the YouTube upload or official Instagram post about this episode. If you like what you heard, we'd appreciate a rating on the podcast app you're choosing. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio. Amazon Music is a new thing, right?
Yep. Got it in the last 10 episodes of the series.
It's all good. Welcome, Amazon people. That sounded problematic. And CastBox.
Also Spotify and Google Podcasts. You just skipped over those. So great job, Rod.
Bye.